The topic for today is about achieving business value using GS technology. My name is Venkat, and I have been a senior projects manager at Gistech for about almost 18 years now. I had the opportunity to be part of several engagements in the region here, from very complex projects to moderately reasonably complex projects. So and to more simpler ones. So the whole idea of today's presentation is about focusing not primarily on the technology itself. So I will not be talking about specifically on a product, but we'll have to go back to the basics. So we will go back and review the basics that has to be kept in our mind before we start to embark on a GS implementation. Because this is one of the reasons many projects they start with full pace, but eventually they lose steam along the way, and they really don't meet the business objectives of the organization. All right, so with that, I will first start by with the purpose. So I think everything starts with the specific purpose in mind, and a GS project or enterprise GS implementation is no different. So there has to be a very convincing reason why we need to start a project, right? Now, I want to start the session by having initially an audience poll. Let's review the results here. So what do we have in hand? Okay, it's great to see that people have actually sort of narrowed down on two important aspects, and and I think of those two, the business value and objectives is the most critical factor that you need to start considering before embarking on any GS project. Now, all the other factors are, I wouldn't say it's not important, but the most fundamental, the most fundamental aspect that one needs to consider when initiating a project is the business value and objectives. Now, you can see that, for example, the project funding is also very critical, but this comes at a later stage. If you have the right business value of the project being articulated, if you have those objectives being understood correctly, what your project has to achieve at the end of the day, now the other things are easy to sort out. Of course, technology is also a big player in the whole scheme of things, but again, the core focus is about the business value and objectives. So what I want to highlight here is that when you start out on your specific enterprise GS project, do not forget to start with the business in mind. So that's our starting point for the whole thing. All right. Now, managing a 21st century city, I can see that I think the participants are all from different sectors. Many of you are from utilities, some of you are from transportation industry, some of you could be from healthcare, some of you could be from environmental agencies, so on and so forth. And also some people are representing from the private sector. So if you are doing business with the government, if you're giving solutions to the government, you also have to keep in or bear in mind that, again, whatever we do, whether you are a solution provider working with the government or you are a department serving your customers, your citizens there, finally, your business objectives have to be kept in mind. Now, let me come back to this slide in here. Managing a 21st century city is not going to be easy. You can see that there are so many aspects, so many sectors or industries have to collaborate with one another. There is enormous amount of assets to be managed, information coming from those assets to be filtered, managed again, and resources to be optimized and allocated accordingly. Now, we all know this, right? So for example, if you are coming from a municipality background and your land-based data is of critical importance and you have to share it with your other stakeholders out in your community, whether it's utility authorities for NOC purposes or for transportation authorities. And similarly, for example, if you're a utility authority, your NOCs are really dependent on other utilities around in that area, plus the land base, for example. So there's enormous amount of collaboration that is required in order to manage a 21st century city. And that brings up the real purpose behind it, why we are all here today. This needs a strong location strategy to be developed to collect, connect, and collaborate with one another. So basically, if you don't start with a strategy, your projects are bound to fail. And that's, even though it's quite hard to digest this fact, but that's the reality. The reality is that because we're living in a very complicated ecosystem where everybody is dependent on each other's work and the information there. It's of critical importance that a proper location strategy is devised within your organization, within a department, and you take it from there. As 21st century business leaders and IT leaders, we have to grapple with a lot of challenges now. First of all, the technology is changing rapidly. So your location strategy has to keep in mind the technology that you plan for today may not be the same tomorrow. And that's the reality again. Identifying optimum solutions. Now, we are also in an era where one problem could have multiple solutions. And I could give you an example for this one. For example, 20 years back or 30 years back, when people used to go and buy imagery, they used to go and buy using aerial photography. Then came the satellite imagery data. Now we're talking about drones data, lidar-based data. So for the same problem, you could have multiple solutions. So this means that as the business leader, as a GS leader in your organization, you need to understand, for example, what solution will fit for you in that context and choose the right solution. So that's a critical part of the whole challenge in front of us while developing a location strategy. Data ownership and responsibilities. Now, again, this is a very critical aspect and one of the most challenging things that we come across in every entity, in every organization. Even though the GS technology has matured a lot, the processes around managing data, identifying the owners for the data, at what frequency the data is being updated, and the core responsibilities are not still laid out on the ground. So those things have to be still tackled. Sustainability, limitations and constraints, again, those go hand in hand. Like, for example, if we have all the money in the world, all the time in the world, we all can do a great job. But unfortunately, that's not the case. In reality, we all have limited resources. We need to work with limitations and constraints. And we also have to ensure that the business is sustainable. Your department's business is sustainable. By making your department's business sustainable, you make your organization's business and services sustainable. And then this rolls out eventually for the whole country, right? So again, trying to plan your location strategy around this is a key factor. Facts-based decision making. Now, again, in an era where we all are being distracted by lots of data being generated from social media, from different sources, it's all the more important as leaders, as managers, as even analysts, data scientists, you have to know that you are making those decisions based on real facts and not based on speculations. And again, the key factor is the location strategy plays, or when you devise a location strategy, all those elements have to be kept in mind. Now, the other aspect of it is also the GS is becoming part of a larger IT ecosystem. Now, people, I think 20 years back, GS used to be a simple desktop tool. Somebody used to be tucked away in a corner in an office. They used to have their own software. They used to do some sort of data editing, and that was it. Then few years later, then there was a smaller ecosystem wherein we had a couple of server machines. There was a client server technology being put in place. And then we used to serve a certain number of users. Now we are talking about, when we approach 2020 and beyond, now we're talking about a very collaborative ecosystem wherein your GS is not sitting anymore in isolation. Your GS system is not sitting anymore in isolation. Your GS, the teams that are working on the GS is not sitting anymore in isolation. They all have to interact with one another. So, and they all have to embrace part of the IT framework. So eventually you're talking about now, if you're going to have a GS deployment in your on-premises, so you're going to be talking about a huge investment in terms of hardware infrastructure, networking, security. So data, all those things eventually you have to have touch points with your IT department, with your CIO, with your the IT stakeholders out there. And also on the other side, you're also serving the business users. So this means that there is also constant interaction happening with your people who are going to use that actual application. So in other sense, that we have to ensure that the roles are getting changed now. We all have to adapt quickly, and we all have to adapt in a way that for tomorrow's GS organization or tomorrow's GS department, you're all ready in terms of skills, capacity in terms of really creating a value for that particular organization. Now let's try to zoom in a little bit more about what do we really mean by this business value, right? So it's a very it's a jargon that's being thrown out there. Let's understand what is an organization's business value. So business value has two parts to it. So there is a tangible elements and there are intangible elements. There are two primary components that contribute to a business value. Tangible elements are those which are, for example, monetary assets, the cash in hand in a company, in an organization, for example. Fixed assets, it could be land, it could be building, it could be machinery. So in case of utility authorities, it could be their substations, it could be their plants, the transformers and things like the assets. So in each and every industry, depending on what you manage as assets, those are all your tangible things, fixed assets. And there are also those intangible elements, brand, recognition, goodwill, public benefit, copyrights, and most of all, human skills and abilities or expertise. Those also form part of the business value. Now, why is it important? You should have, as part of your GS department, when you devise a location strategy, you need to ensure that you bring in both these elements together to create a good business value and a sustainable future. If we don't consider both these aspects, there is going to be problems along the way. And we'll come in the upcoming slides, we'll try to see what are the methods and best practices available out there where we can really maximize this business value. So eventually, our location strategy is all moving towards what we call as the DIKW pyramid. All right, so don't worry about that, the terminology there. It simply means that this pyramid shows the bottommost foundation layer, which is the data. Then you have the information, then you have knowledge, and then you have the wisdom. Now, let's try to walk through this with an example, right? So we are all in this middle of this pandemic. We all know this one. I hope it'll get resolved one day, and we should all have a safe and happy life. Now, let's say at the ground level, if you are, for example, a health authority, now you want to talk about data, infectious disease data, that's a raw data, right? Now, the moment you start identifying, and out of your location strategy, if you start identifying where that particular infectious disease is happening, in which community, in which sector, in which district it's happening, which means you're adding or you're answering those questions related to what, where, and when. Where is it happening? It's happening in this sector. It's happening in this community. It's happening in this district. When is it happening? You bring in the time constraint to it. So if you bring in and answer those questions, you add the next value to that data, which is information. Now, again, that's not enough. We cannot stop at the information level. Then you go and move forward to the next level, which is knowledge. Now, by knowing that there is a problem in this particular area or this district or this sector, I can bring it to a context. Either if I am living within that area, am I living within that area, or my subject of interest, which means I'm studying for a certain group of population, whether impacted or not, then I bring it to a context. I bring that information and try to address it in a specific context. We will not stop there. Your final objective of the location strategy is to reach when you apply that knowledge as a wisdom. This means that you are taking some actions out of that knowledge, what we call as actionable insights. For example, we'll say you should stay indoors, you need to work from home, other rules of engagement, things like this. So that's where we move from a data all the way up to the wisdom level. So this is the real, if you want to simplify your whole location strategy in one single essence of it, I think this is the key thing, to move your raw data into an information, into a piece of knowledge, and finally into wisdom by which we can take some clear actions. Now let's try to focus more on the method. So we sort of address the purpose behind why we should do the location strategy. Why do you need to have a location strategy? Now let's try to see what is the method by which I can reach there. So there are some very good industry practices that we can look into. To understanding location strategy, there is two main parts to it, right? So there is a vision side of it and there's a roadmap side of it. So every organization, whoever is dealing with lots of location data, you have to have both these things in mind when you develop the location strategy. One is about the vision, where you have to relate your business vision with your location strategy. So you're not collecting a GS data, you're not developing a GS application for nobody. You're doing it for a purpose. So let's keep this in mind. Second factor is success criteria. You have to know what is the success criteria for different kinds of people or different kinds of stakeholders. And then you come out with those list of initiatives. So in simple words, the vision actually tries to again go back and answer more deeply, why are we doing this location strategy and what is the benefit to it for the organization? Whereas the roadmap will pretty much address how are you going to get there. So that's as simple as this. So the first one, you try to address, why am I doing this one? What's going to be of benefit to the organization and to my department and to my business? The second part of it is to ensure how are we going to reach there through business processes, through refinement of the business process by defining new business process. And we will talk more about it in the upcoming slides about what are the maturity models available there to evaluate this. And then the information technology side of it and the workforce capabilities. So these are the things that you require for you to get there. So in simple words, if you want to summarize or define this part, location strategy means two things. You discover and explore opportunities of utilizing location information for your business. This means you go and really explore and exploit those opportunities of utilizing location information for your business, which means that you have to bring in maps and key visualizations into your business by making those locations really mean what you can do to bring in more revenue for your business, or maybe you can again increase the business value at the end of the day. And the second part is to devise the strategy for realizing that opportunity. So the strategy part is basically how you have the roadmap being developed and all those things. So this is a very key slide. I request all of you to take note of this. This is coming from as a very simple step by Esri. So they have formulated this part where they say that you develop your location strategy based on the vision and the roadmap. And then you have prioritized initiatives. This means that you don't go and start implementing all the initiatives that come to your mind. It's much better that if you start to focus on the ones, you rank them, you prioritize them, you look at the ones which are going to be of key benefit to you in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And depending on that, you take the decisions of implementing all those initiatives. So there's two parts in the slide that you can see there. There's something on the left side, which talks about the vision and the roadmap, which is a very important step of the overall strategy development. And the right side, where you see those initiatives, this is where you go through the normal cycle of project life cycle, where you plan, you implement, you review, you operate. So you go through this cycle typically on your, as you can see on the right side. Now, the right side is of no value if you don't do the left side properly. So the most critical part or important takeaway I would say is that before you start engaging on directly a project execution, it's always very important to go back and look at the left side, which is the location strategy. Do you have a location strategy or not? And always go back and have targeted phased approach and incremental success. Rome was not built on a day, and we all know this, right? So we all have to take it up in certain baby steps initially, especially when you're exploring a new thing, and then slowly start growing it up further and scaling it up further. And at all the times, even when you're in the initiative cycle, which means even when you're in the planning, implementing, reviewing, and operating side of the things, you still have to go back and review, are you aligning still with your organization vision and objectives? Because priorities could change rapidly. And we all know this, especially with the pandemic we are all in right now. The priorities could have really changed in your business departments. It's extremely crucial that you have a very honest and transparent conversation back with your boss and then with your executive stakeholders to understand where is the current focus. Where do you have to focus if you're a GS manager, if you're a person who's going to try to implement a GS solution, where do you really need to focus now for me to really maximize the business value? So it's a constant check and measure to go back and fit it with your business. So with that, I want to start a simple, again, an audience poll here. The question is, do you have a location strategy clearly defined for your organization? All right, so it's excellent to see that almost more than 60% of the participants here are having a clear location strategy. For those people who either don't have it or you don't know, I strongly request you to go back and review with your colleagues and with also your superiors to get an understanding what is the location strategy currently in the organization and align accordingly. Now, part of the first phase, which is to understanding the vision and the business objectives for the location strategy, three main areas are there. First one is to understanding the vision, which means you have to go back and understand what is the organizational mission, what is the bold vision of your organization as well as the department, what does success look for each stakeholder and player, what are those outcomes and results that you are really interested in, what difference are you going to make by doing a specific GS implementation, and last and but not the least, and a very important one, at this stage, you're not really worried about the technology here, you're worried more about the business. So you have to constantly interact with your stakeholders in a more business language. And that's the key factor here during the visioning stage. And always try to answer, why are you doing this? And that's the simple and straightforward question to ask. Why am I doing what I'm doing? That's the question to be asked in here. This is, for example, I just had a chance to look at the Vision 2021 site. So it's a very simple site. At the same time, they've articulated the key vision, what UAE is to achieve by 2021. And there are, I think, about 6 main areas that the central government or the federal government of UAE is targeting, which to ensure that there's a world-class healthcare, there is a competitive knowledge-based economy is being developed, a safe and public fair judiciary is developed, and so on and so forth. The whole idea is to ensure that your location strategy, when you develop your applications, your GS maps and so on, this is, for example, I'm talking about the vision of the UAE government, right? Now, this could be trickled down to a let's say, a government agency in Dubai, or could be in other Emirates there. And each agency has got its own vision and objectives based on this, for example. So this means that whatever you do, you have to go back and relate your applications, your data collection, whatever you do in terms of your GS department has to be aligned with those business goals that's outlined in your organization, right? So this brings up to a very interesting, I would call it a differentiating matrix here. You could have a typical GS initiative, right? And you could have a successful GS initiative. What makes a particular initiative the usual one, the traditional one, the legacy one, and what makes an initiative a successful one? So there are some very important and key differentiating factors. The typical GS initiative is always relying on is technology-led, technology-driven. But a successful GS initiative is always business-led and business-driven. We always get carried away more about the project milestones, right? So are you completing a particular project on time? Are you completing a particular milestone on time? But we fail to see, is it really creating a value in that milestone or not? So that's again one of the key factors to keep in mind. It's not about just a milestone being delivered. It's about what is the value that the milestone is creating for me. Again, we already saw this earlier, no data ownership and processes, whereas for a successful GS initiative, well-defined data ownership and process are available. A normal GS initiative will always focus on applications, tools, and functions. But whereas a successful GS initiative will look at delivering a business capability. Even you might have a simple smartphone app with 3-4 simple functions. You could also have a very sophisticated application with 30, 40 functions in there, but still it's not delivering what's it did deliver. And there are a lot of examples like this. You can go to Uber, Careem, and those kind of apps. The reason for them to be so successful is because they're simple to use, and they've really stuck with the user in a manner that they have really delivered a business capability in there, and that's a real distinguishing factor in that one. So It's not about how much you are sort of piling up in terms of functionalities and features in a particular application. It's about what are you really delivering as a business capability. This is one of my favorite ones. So we all know this, right? We all start developing solutions and eventually we start to find users for it. So again, that's one of those biggest shortcomings in the past. But in the recent last 3-4 years, that trend has started to change. There's a lot of awareness right now, and the user groups have to be constantly involved in your application process. So this means right from day one, right from the time of developing a location strategy and including your roadmap, you need to know who's your audience, who's going to use the applications. So the last two are pretty straightforward, and we have talked about a lot. You have to start linking your GS applications to your business strategic objectives. And the last is about keep measuring your GS solutions. Keep measuring the usage. Keep measuring, are you in the right track or not? Now, this is a very simple graph I can explain to you. The x-axis, for example, shows the complexity of a project implementation, right? So on the right side, as you move on the x-axis, it's easier to implement in terms of a project. On the left side, if you move, it's more on the complex side to implement a particular project. On the y-axis, you can see the more you move towards the top, you have a high business value, high impact projects. The more you go below, you have low impact in terms of business value. The reason for the slide is, how do you go about doing project prioritization? Your initial intent, it should always be to go after these. I'm showing you right now with the red cloud there. So those projects which are easier to develop, easier to implement, and have a high business value and impact, go after them. This also applies for any tools that you want to implement or features or functionalities you want to implement in a particular application. Which means if you're using configurable based apps, COTS based apps, you always go with them because you can immediately go give the business capability to the user, and you can always go back and enhance it further. The next one is actually you target the harder ones, but it's still having a lot of business value, right? So you can still target the harder features or harder projects which are difficult to implement but still can yield the value, which means there's a lot of customizations involved, more investment is required, so on and so forth. That's your second priority. The third is, in fact, if you get a chance, you try to limit the number of initiatives or projects that you want to be in this area, which is basically that it's easier to implement, but it's still not got a really good value, a really good business value. And the last, stay away from the zone completely. This means that stay away from those projects which are extremely hard to implement, needs a lot of investment, and it creates the lowest business value for a company. So you could, for example, there have been cases in the past where you could go and do a huge survey, but you really don't know whether that survey is going to yield you the right results or not, for example. So stay away from those kind of projects. Now let's look at very quickly on the roadmap side of things, which means now you know why are we doing certain initiatives. Let's try to see how do you prepare a roadmap and what elements go into it. So first one is the business process surrounding your location strategy. The information technology side of it, you need to understand the business, technology, the data, the applications, infrastructure, and the people who are going to be implementing that, and the workforce capabilities. Do you have the team that can really do the job for you, or do you have to outsource a certain kind of work? Assessing your technical skills, assessing the roles, all this comes part of your roadmap exercise. Again, the question is about what, how, and when. Now, okay, this is a very important slide and a very key slide. I want you to please take note of it. This talks about 9 distinct patterns of use in GIS. Quite frankly, if you want to build a solution, a GIS solution for your organization, it would have to follow, or it would have to fall into one of those 9 categories that I'm showing you right now on the slide. So mapping and visualization is the first one. Data management is second one. Third is field mobility. Fourth is monitoring. Fifth is analytics. Sixth is design and planning. Seventh is decision support, constant engagement, sharing, and collaboration. This means that the moment you start envisioning your roadmap and you want to put your solutions into a certain sort of a bucket, right? What kind of things am I targeting for my business? You would probably start putting this together. And I will show you a case study, typically how you go about doing this. And you can also adopt it for your industry. So the mapping and visualization is pretty straightforward. So you have to just understand those use cases that are related to the mapping and visualization, whether it's 2D maps, 3D maps, thematic maps, all those kinds of visualization typically that you do on a normal WebGS application, those all fall under the category. Data management is all about how you manage your data warehouse, your geodatabases and things like this. Field mobility is more about how you actually engage your field workforce with the right field apps, for example. The monitoring, again, focuses on real-time monitoring. How are you integrating your GIS with the real-time sensors data, for example, real-time data coming from the field, for example. So it's about real-time monitoring. Analytics is about observing historical data, observing the trends for it, and how do you analyze the situation in the past, and how do you predict the future. So you do those kind of analytics. Then you have the design and planning. Again, to find out optimal solutions, you may have to look at multiple alternate scenarios. Decision support, these are typically your dashboards that you create. So eventually most of your projects would also have a certain kind of a dashboard, so that you need to target on. Constant engagement, this means that how are you going to collaborate and share your data and engage the other stakeholders. So the last two sort of go with each other, constant engagement and sharing and collaboration. So if you were to plan a GIS application or a solution, this is a generalized formula that we can look at how to categorize them and then go about developing the roadmap. Now, given that, let's take another quick polling question here. Which GIS patterns of use below do you think your organization location strategy should focus more on? Where do you think your organization should focus more on in terms of those different patterns of use that we talked about? Should you focus more on mapping and visualization? Should you focus on data management? Should you focus on field mobility apps, real-time events monitoring, analytics, decision support systems, so on and so forth? So which area do you want to really focus on? Okay, so there is an overwhelming response in favor of dashboards. That's very interesting to see. And it's quite, to be honest with you, it's quite a fact, because dashboards, in one way, they bring out two things in terms of value. One is, for the executive decision makers, they quickly show you where you need to focus in terms of results and what actions to be taken. That's one thing. So that's one of the biggest advantages of going with dashboards. In fact, I have seen many organizations where they start developing a couple of dashboards, and then the entire process behind it, how you produce data, how you actually have the data exchange process coming from multiple stakeholders, all put in place in a very rapid pace of time. So yes, I think the audience got it right, that one of the key factors that everybody should be focusing more is towards having more dashboards that will encourage, especially executive stakeholder visibility about what you're doing as a GIS department. And of course, all the other things are also, I wouldn't say it's not important. Again, the key factors, go back to see how much each one of those areas are tying back to your business. Okay, so I want to walk through an example. If you were to apply what we just talked about now, how would you approach in developing a typical roadmap and identifying those different areas or patterns of use, right? To get the GIS business alignment right. So imagine that you are a health authority, okay, and you wanted to start to create, you want to identify which are the different GIS patterns of use that I need to adopt in my organization to cater to these different use cases here. So on the left side, you can see the first column in there. It talks about all the high-level use cases. So this could be for your own industry. I mean, this I'm just showing you the example for in case of a let's say a health sector, and in case if they want to track a particular pandemic, right? So these are some of the high-level use cases here. Map the cases, get a medical survey done, medical capacity monitoring, analysis of health data, community information and guidance. And then what you do is you start filling, and you can see on the top in the table there, all those 9 patterns of use are being shown there. So, and then you start putting those pins there to see those cases, how do they fit in those different buckets in there. So for example, the map cases, it means mapping and visualization has to be there, data management has to be there, there should be some sort of monitoring, constant engagement and sharing and collaboration. And then you start filling out all those different areas in there. So you start putting those pins there to see which one of those areas or different patterns of use you need to target for those different use cases. So this could also be applied for different industries. For example, you can apply this same concept what I'm talking about. If you're going to issue an NOC, if you're going to issue a permit, if that's a use case, for example, which are those areas that I need to target right now. Once you do this, the next one is you'll get a better clarity on how to define this one. This is where you start to map between the existing products, because Esri has got a wide variety of products, right? So I mean, even we as sometimes as vendors, we get lost in the kind of products that Esri produces. There's about 120 products out there, and probably more. And this means that you have to somehow find how your particular use case translates to a particular application. And this application, what is its purpose? What is the purpose of the application? Who is the audience for it? The users for it? And which are the most ideal solutions for it? So the exercise that I just showed you right now will help you to sort of map this part correctly, right? So you can see, for example, on the first column, all those use cases that we saw earlier has been transformed into more of specific applications in there. So you can have a medical survey application. I can have a medical capacity dashboard, a situational awareness dashboard, facility demand analysis, health analysis. Then, for example, COVID-19 response hub, for example, it's an open data store hub that you can also implement. And on the right side of the table, you can see, for example, which are the Esri solutions that typically go with such applications. This could be, for example, Survey 123, Operations Dashboard, RGS Insights for analytics, for example. And if you have real-time monitoring and things like this, then you can talk about Geo Event Processor and other products out there. And RGS Hub for complete open data management and sharing the data with the rest of the public. So this is how you actually sort of approach a problem of this nature. You start with by defining the use cases. You map it to the different patterns of use. Then from there, you start to map it to the applications that you want to develop, the purpose for it, and then you map it to the Esri products and solutions. And eventually, you're going to be able to produce such kind of maps and visualizations. So many times what happens, we start doing this and then we try to go back and fix those issues. So I think what I just showed you is sort of a method by which you can start to target in a more methodical approach before you reach to the state what you see on the screen right now, which is about producing those dashboards, producing those thematic maps, those different kinds of heat maps, visualizations, and so on and so forth. So that brings up to a very interesting thing about what are the key ingredients of a successful GS roadmap. Now, the first and the foremost is people. So let's not forget that there are three main roles in here: executive sponsor, the champion user, and the technical leadership team. Those three are the main roles who have to ensure that all those four elements that you see outside the circle are all tied correctly. The technology, the business objectives, the processes, and you're all leading to a value-based outcomes. It's not just about producing a certain deliverable, but producing a value-based outcome at the end of the day. Then again, constantly have a business conversation, not a technical conversation, especially during the roadmap stage. You're always going to use the industry jargons, where if you're in the utility sector, you're in the transportation sector, you're in the healthcare sector, in different sectors, try to use the business language, try to articulate the business value, what is it for that particular industry, for the particular department, dealing with that one, and for the particular end user group, and tell it as a certain story and use cases. Mindset, again, the mindset should be focused on business outcomes, envision quick wins. Nobody's going to wait for 3 years to produce a result. So take it in a phased approach. It's okay always to start with some uncertainty, and you have to be agile and be flexible and keep adapting. That's the key factor about in terms of mindset. The fourth is more from try to get a digital transformation moving forward. This means that we all cannot escape this anymore. We have to find a way how to get the digital transformation going in each and every department and in each and every organization we are in. This means that how do you get the data coming from those physical assets? How do you connect them with your GS in terms of sensors and all those things? The real-time monitoring of data, the connecting the data feeds, and bringing complete a holistic digital transformation, right? Don't forget your end user, and don't also forget that now we're talking about an era where people are sort of hooked on to smartphones for the whole day. So pretty much your user is going to expect that most of the applications are going to be mobile friendly, and you have to handle that part. And last but not the least, definitely, the very important part is about how do you have an efficient procurement strategy. What you see on the left side is a traditional contracting method where you start with the tender or RFP, you go for a technical commercial proposal, evaluation award, project execution, acceptance, you create the value, and then you go to the operation maintenance period. Typically, from the time a project is envisioned, even by the time you go and float an RFP, you float a tender, and by the time you evaluate it, quite frankly, the timeline is lost here. So basically, you lose the value a lot in terms of what you want to start out with. In fact, I've seen many business leaders actually, they start dropping a particular idea or a project because they know that the procurement process is so complicated. Now, again, we have to do this sort of education also with the procurement department. So we have that role also to play in here as GS professionals, because the more we are not a construction industry where things are really done on a blueprint first and then you start developing. This, we are talking about an agile approach here. Things start to evolve. We keep changing things over and over again. So this means we need more agile models to be in place to handle GS initiatives and IT initiatives. So there are some efficient T&M models out there. So I don't want to talk about all this, the T&M models out there, but you have to target and choose the right T&M models to start working with, which means time and material models. You use a certain set of mandates coming from a certain vendor, and you use it for a targeted initiative, and then you close it and you move forward, right? So instead of trying to go through an RFP and going through the entire process, which is going to take maybe months to years, you're not going to see the light at the end of the day. And by the time you've reached that end of the project, the value that you were supposed to create at the start of the project is lost by the time you reach towards the end of the project. Now that brings up to the question, really, as a GS leader or a champion user, you have to connect all the different dots together here. You have to understand what a database specialist is going to do. You have to know what a data analyst is going to do, a GS specialist is going to do, a business analyst, a cartographer, a GS manager, sales and marketing. You may be surprised to see a sales and marketing in there. You know, it's very important that you have to market yourself within your organization in the right manner to show up that you've done an excellent work and it's really tied back to the business. So many times we find that since this is not being done, it's not being articulated in the right manner, a lot of further project budgeting and funding is not being received. So this has to constantly happen. Then of course, solutions architect developer. So today's GS leaders should have a holistic understanding to connect all these aspects, and you should draw out the roadmap. Now, let's just quickly touch upon the other roadmap elements. We talked about this earlier from an information technology point of view and the workforce capabilities, right? So how do you actually measure the maturity of your GS? So there is a way to do that. Now, URISA is a website. It's called Urban Region Information System and Association. They actually have developed a model called capability maturity models to measure and benchmark your GS systems and your GS workforce. And they have like 5 levels, okay? And you can do it at your own pace. There is a questionnaire. You can see at the bottom of the screen there is a self-assessment toolkit that has been provided by them. It's a simple questionnaire that you can always use, and you can use that to actually run through this with your GS department and see whether you are in which stage you are in terms of the GS maturity. Now, I just want to quickly touch upon those different levels. The first one, if you're in level 1, which I don't think most of you are, frankly speaking, I think we have a very mature GS community in the region, and we know this. Level 1 is basically when processes are completely unpredictable and ad hoc and chaos. This means that nobody knows really how GS fits into the whole scheme of things in the organization. Nobody knows how a data is produced, who's the data custodian. Things are not very clear. It's not monitored properly. It's poorly controlled. Everything is reactive. This means nobody's planning anything in here, right? Managed level 2, this means processes are characterized, but still things are reactive. And as you move towards the whole thing, you can see that by level 5, it's very difficult to reach level 5, of course, but if you're in level 4, you're in good shape. So, and these are some of the tools that are available right now to go and gauge this from your end. Now, if you're level 1, you are having the lowest quality and the highest risk. If you are on the level 5, you have the highest quality and the lowest risk. So what do they really target here, right? In terms of the assessment itself, they target on two things. They target in terms of infrastructure, they call it enabling capability, they call it EC components, and they have staff process execution ability. This means what is the resources and the team that's involved in working with infrastructure. So they have both these process built into it, and the questions that are there in the assessment for you to say, for example, to gauge whether you're doing good in terms of infrastructure, are you doing in terms of processes, and are you doing in terms of staff capability also. All right, and then based on that, you can develop a impact analysis on and the ROI from it. So typical roadmap outcomes at the end of the day could look like something like this. You could identify a bunch of initiatives that you're currently looking at, and there are some emerging trends that's happening, and that we should not forget. Cloud-based services are getting more prominent. Business intelligence services are getting more prominent. Advanced visualization like 3D visualization is getting more and more prominent. Integrating with building information models is an emerging trend that we are seeing right now. And then of course the Internet of Things and the master data management. So this is something that you will sort of come out as an exercise towards the end of the roadmap study. To run this in a more systematic and a methodical manner, it's extremely important that a proper governance structure is put in place. So there are 3 important aspects to it: GS work groups, GS technical team, and GS steering group. The GS steering group is very clear. This is where the executive sponsorship lies. This is where the person who's going to put the money on the table is going to make the final call there. So he defines the vision and strategy, the priorities for the work. And then there is a group that's supporting the executive sponsor there in terms of defining the policies and standards, benchmarking and governance, and the GS work program definition. And the technical team really focuses more in terms of architecture, execution and delivery, infrastructure deployment, and things like this. And the GS work groups are your champion users who have to be really working together with the technical as well as the GS steering group. So typically what happens is you will have to choose individuals from each of those areas. They have regular meetings where they sort of bounce back ideas and see how to move the subject towards the original objective, the business objectives and the goals. So with that, I want to start the last question, the last polling question here. I have an idea for a GS solution that will add value to our business. To implement it with limited resources, manpower and cost, and short time, what is the best approach should I consider? So there are 4 options out there. First one, address all requirements and custom develop the application from scratch to meet the needs. Restrict to configurable GS COT apps for the complete solution. Restrict to configurable GS COTS-based apps for the initial operating capability. Evaluate and then decide further. The last one, drop the GS idea and look for other solutions. Again, okay, it's very interesting to see that you've got the right option there. So the advice coming from the industry experts out there, especially from the primary product vendor also, is that you start always using the configurable apps. You give it for an initial operating time for some time, evaluate it, measure the success, and then you go for custom development. Always remember in mind that starting with a full-blown custom development is going to be very expensive to create, to manage in the future for upgrades and things like this. So it's very important that, and there is plenty of apps and products out there right now from Esri that you can plug and play directly. So that should be your first option before you explore the other ones. Yeah. RGS Online, there are several apps available for plug and play. And there's something called solutions.rgs.com where they have predefined templates for many industry sectors. They already have configurable forms. They have already built-in templates that you can directly start using it, whether it's for survey 1 to 3 kind of apps, workforce kind of apps, or for many other solutions. So you can just take those templates and start using it. All right, thank you. Thanks a lot for joining.